Right, even though you don't want to talk about it, let's evaluate just a couple of things to talk about from the Liverpool game against Manchester United. First of all, I think Manchester United played very well. I think I started my video with this yesterday. I think they worked Liverpool out. They were very structured and they targeted Liverpool's weaknesses and knew what Liverpool were going to come in and do. Earlier on in the season, they were not the same team. We were able to very easily pick them apart. Very often their press was just a first press, whereas this was a much more structured idea and it was much more reflective of what Ruben Amorim probably wants. But it's not to say that Liverpool didn't work out how to bypass elements of their game and also spurn a lot of big chances. You will remember that there was that big chance for McAllister early on. I think Salah got into some great positions. You know, it's not as if Liverpool weren't creating things. It's not as if we didn't go in at half-time with a decent XG that we were beginning to build up and some confidence in the chances that we were creating. We were picking them apart. We were showing that we're more than just a long ball team and hope that Salah gets onto the end of it or whatever. McAllister was great in the build-up. Gravenberch was turning Mainu at many different points. And Curtis was beginning to get into the game. I think it's more difficult for Curtis to get into the game when you've got someone like Diaz and there's a bit of crossover in those two positions. It left Kurt a little bit deeper. I never really felt he was able to get on the ball in the way that he needed to. I don't think he quite ever worked out what his position was, like verging towards that right-hand side. But equally, I don't necessarily think that was his fault. I think the basis that we were building from and the issues that we had all come from our weakness at fullback on both sides, but for very different reasons. On the left-hand side, Andy Robertson, application-wise, fantastic. He applies himself really well, and the ideas that he's trying to execute, I think, are really good ideas. His problem is his body at this point isn't able to do some of those things, and I think he's very often thinking, oh, I can make this, or oh, I should be able to do this, and he's overestimating or judging in the wrong direction as to what he's capable of out in the field. I don't want to sound patronising, it's just that simple. Trent's almost the other way. Trent's application is not there at the moment, and it hasn't been for quite some time. And I think he is able and capable of doing a lot more. So he tries a lot of these things. But that left him with a 75% pass rate. It left him with 5 duels, which he lost each of them against Dalot. I mean, Dalot's a great player, but, you know, Dalot and Bruno Fernandes had Liverpool's right side on toast, or their left-hand side, Liverpool's right-hand side on toast yesterday. And multiple times, Konate was just isolated out there on his own after 2 training sessions back. That's a slot decision, sure, but I still think that Liverpool could have done better in all those situations, and we probably wouldn't have been exposed and had Lisandro Martinez with the space to finish if we'd had and if we played a more traditional right-back role yesterday. Instead, Trent was caught halfway down the field, sometimes like just out of position, uncovering, and sometimes not far enough forward to be able to actually influence the game. A couple of times he brought it forward early on and he found himself in that position, but realistically, what we're looking for, and some of the more critical evaluations, should we say, of Trent, come from the fact that we're now looking at him in a much harsher light. A, because of the Real Madrid thing, where it's like, cool, you want to go to Real Madrid, we're not going to give you the same support in that same way if we don't know that we're not getting that same care and love back. That might seem like a very harsh supporter approach to it, but I think that's one approach that Liverpool supporters have. I think the other aspect of that is it's very difficult to support a player in those kind of circumstances where you're like, we need to be able to get behind you here. Can we get behind you in this scenario? And then I also think that it comes from, they're now evaluating, right, what is it we actually need at the right back position? If we are going to move on from Trent, which Trent is kind of creating, and Liverpool are creating this idea of like, we're going to move on from him, what is it we're going to get? And I think a lot of Liverpool fans will go, we're going to need a bit of a more traditional right back, or someone who's much more defensively minded at right back. Trent, very good, and Slot has been doing a lot of one-on-one work with him. I think he's been improving elements of his game, but I think those elements were always there. Trent has always been good. Trent has always been confident in defence. I think Slot knew that. It's just getting that application, and it just was not there. So when you're in contract negotiations, when you're not exactly in the supporters' good books, which is perfectly fine, you need to show that application. And if you want to be a future captain, if you want to be in these kind of positions, you just have to show more than he showed yesterday. And that's the frustration for us. But we've known that for a while. All of the things that United exposed yesterday are not things that we didn't know before. It's not as if we went, God, left back it's tricky, or, Trent's out of position, or, I'll get on to what else we need in a minute. The final thing I'd say is, and I think a lot of people aren't understanding this, when you feel like you've got a local lad, he's going to get more criticism just naturally, because it feels like there's similar to a family scenario, right? The analogy works with family. you'll be more likely to criticize, you'll also be way more likely to big them up and be in their corner if someone else comes for him. You can make those criticisms, but if a United fan, if a City fan, if someone else, if the England manager doesn't play him, of course, you're going to back your guy. It's not unrealistic both ways. It's very realistic to say he's one of the best in the world. It's also very realistic to say he's one of the best in the world. Do we necessarily need that kind of player in that kind of position? And also, at this point, fueling some headlines around the club, which I don't necessarily think are going away. I think if anything, they're going to stick around. But we knew that these things always existed. Then let's get on to Liverpool's front line, which I think ultimately, I'm not saying it cost us the game, but I think we could have done better in the front line. First of all, some people saying, oh, you're going to criticize Trent, let's criticize Diaz. Diaz as a false nine has a very specialist position. He has a very difficult job, right? His job is not necessarily to be as prevalent as everyone else. It's to swap positions with Gakpo. It's to afford Robbo some space. It's to drag players out of position. It's to be an awkward presence all the time. And you're always there to kind of be part of a rotation. You're there to start the press, to get through. They had 3 guys at the back, very difficult to press. They had a packed midfield, and their centre-back stepped up when they needed to really, really well. And Diaz was part of baiting them out of those kind of positions. In the previous game, we played against Casemiro, a very easily baitable player. Ugarte's in aggression and Mainoo's nous on the ball, should we call it that, got them through these scenarios, or at least multiple times got them through those scenarios. Liverpool created chances, didn't get them, we wasted them. We didn't make the most of those opportunities. I think Diaz actually, like you say, it's another highlight of the difficulty that we have in that position. Diaz is naturally more of a winger, and I think there is an argument to make that Liverpool if we'd start, say, Jota in the middle, Gakpo on the left or Diaz on the left and Salah on the right, that's probably a stronger starting lineup than Diaz, Gakpo, Salah. But I think we like what Diaz brings to the team, and I think that works quite well for us. Like I said, the dropping deep, the rotation with players to bring other players out of position on the Manchester United side, and also the industrial nature of what he does, the industrious nature of what he does, try and work harder, outwork everyone else. I think that works really well for us. And I think it worked against Manchester United. I just think we didn't capitalise. McAllister benefited from that multiple times. Curtis benefited. Gakpo benefited. So I'm going to go the other way and say I actually think Diaz did relatively well. I just think we needed more legs in there. You saw the difference when Nunez came on. You see why we bring on Jota. I just think the real need at Liverpool right now is for a real striker. Maybe Chiesa is one of those players we could rotate on, but he's fitness-wise just not there. And it needs to be Nunez that goes, and it needs to be another more malleable striker that comes in, which is why I was so disappointed to hear that it looks as if Marmoush has agreed personal terms with Man City. And realistically, we're probably missing out on another player there. Great player, like a player that would have fit Liverpool really, really well. If we can try and turbocharge things in January, bring him in, maybe even loan out Nunez, I would be thrilled with that, frankly. I think Nunez is a good player, but I just don't think he's suited to the style we want to play. Or at this point, his confidence isn't suited to the league. I think going somewhere else, a fresh new start, being back on the continent, being the main man somewhere else and being told, look, we bring you in because we need you to come and score goals. We need your energy. We need all of these different aspects. I think that's much more positive for us. It's just unfortunate, I think, that it hasn't worked out. And I think it's really unfortunate that he was brought in. He was very much a Klopp guy. Very much Jurgen Klopp had a plan for him. And now that same plan just isn't there. And that's fair enough, frankly. I also think we need to acknowledge that while all of these contract situations are swirling around, it's weird that it's only really Trent's that is up for, should we say, evaluation. Salah had a fine game yesterday. Outside of the penalty, I didn't think he was overly influential. I didn't think he was like a star. I don't think he was A1 in the way that he performed. I don't think that was a contract issue, but I think what I'm saying here is the difference in approach towards Trent and towards Salah and Virgil are different, right? Say Virgil had had an approach for him from PSG or whoever, you just name another big European team. Would we see him differently? Possibly, but I think we'd tell that story slightly differently, and the same goes for Salah. I think we just tell that story differently. With Trent, I think we know that his head has turned. I think we know that he's using Real Madrid or Real Madrid are using him, and there's like this three-way triangle of issues which is caused by Liverpool not signing on to a good contract, but do we know why they didn't do that? Trent not signing that contract, do we know why they didn't do that? And then Real Madrid coming for him, do we know why they're doing that now if they know that they're not going to be able to get him until the summer? Like, all these kinds of things, all of these unsure things lead people speculating. And it becomes a problem because, for instance, there was a tweet which went out yesterday. Arsenal fans, and I think this is partially why we need to be careful as fans in general. I'm going to use this as an example, but Arsenal fans yesterday were tweeting things which weren't true, are completely unverifiable. And also, why would certainly this guy know this? We wouldn't know. The tweet, I won't say his name, but the tweet reads, reports from Anfield that the home dressing room was incredibly tense at full time. Trent and Darwin had to be separated from Virgil van Dijk. Players taking sides, nearly coming to blows. Stewards outside the dressing room heard items being thrown and a lot of shouting. Wheels falling off? Completely unverified. Completely untrue. Similarly, I wouldn't be surprised if players were angry with each other or if they did have an evaluation afterwards, but that sounds very unlike this Liverpool team to do this. But also it just came from a random Arsenal account. These kind of results are going to breed this kind of thing. And I said this earlier on in December, expect silly season to start now. 3 huge players on 3 hugely questionable circumstances, and people are going to speculate. I think that's the frustration, I guess, from my side. We knew at the start of the season, when something unsure feels ages off, it's much more easy to just push it to the back of your mind. Real Madrid brought it very much sharply into focus for Liverpool, and it becomes a problem from there on out, right? Without a public knowledge of what Trent wants to do, without public knowledge of what Virgil van Dijk and Salah are going to do, even though Liverpool are saying that they're leaning towards signing contracts, Salah in a recent interview said he's no further to doing that as far as he thinks Liverpool they're in the last 6 months of whatever it is that he's doing there. What he did say, what I thought was good, was he did still put something solid on it, which is, if that is the case, I want to leave on great terms. I want to leave having won a Premier League, having won a Champions League, and something more significant to cement my legacy at the club. I think that's a great way of framing it. I don't necessarily think that's the outcome I want, but I think it's a great way of framing it. If we're going to try and get through the season, that's a great way of moving things forward and keeping things on good terms with the fans. Same goes for Van Dijk. I think a lot of people just assume that Van Dijk is going to re-sign. He's captain of the club. This is probably the best circumstance for him. And he said multiple times, I'm happy with my family here, etc., etc. So I think we feel more sure about that. And also, we've seen more consistency, frankly, from Salah and Van Dijk this season than we have Trent. And I think, there's some great points made in Barney Ronay said on Twitter, Trent is going to have games like this. Every player has games like this. But the fall-off was very significant. I think some people react to fans supporting them. Some people react to belief. Trent is probably one of those guys. And again, it's down to the unique scenario. Being one of the local lads, you want the local lads to back you. You want the fans to be, you're one of those guys. You're one of the guys. When that support goes, how do you respond to that? That's a big part of how Liverpool 12th man it and sort of, multiply through the Anfield atmosphere. The Anfield atmosphere is not something that exists just outside of what the players do. It isn't just hey, you go play and we'll just do this thing. It works in reaction to what is going on the field and what is going on wider outside of that. It can't just be this, Anfield will get us through. It was the multiplication of Klopp and Anfield, the multiplication of Trent and Origi and Anfield that got that goal. It's not a one-way thing. There's a symbiosis there. And I think if the players aren't fully into it, then the fans won't fully react to that. And very often we'll be reticent to give the praise to players that we don't feel deserve it in that moment. And before, we were much more ride or die with these guys. When they don't feel that back, they're not going to give that. There is a give and take to that relationship, is what I'm saying. But I certainly don't want other people to be able to capitalize on this. I certainly want another Premier League title over, not having one and seeing Trent, Virgil, and Salah leave at the end of the season. A friend texted me yesterday, actually. I won't say who it is because I don't want him to get hate, but he was saying, I think this is slot season. And then I think after that, it all drops away. I don't agree with that. But I see the logic from other people from the outside being able to paint these negative downward spiral narratives. First of all, other teams have been terrible this season. This is a great opportunity for us. We have to be able to capitalize. We have to be able to show that killer mentality. And frankly, I don't think we showed that killer mentality against Manchester United. We were complacent. There were times where we felt as if we were lazy. We passed up a lot of opportunities. Liverpool looked as if they were coming into their stride, but never quite capitalized on that. And we made adjustments, which helped us in the second half. But I think from the second that Salah scored that second goal, we assumed we were going to win the game. And it really let it get away from us. Slot internally will be very angry about that. It wasn't a loss, so we can't dwell on it in the same way. But a loss of 2 points in there, I think that's fair enough. I think that's, I would be disappointed with that. That's a gimme, should we say, for... we should be able to criticise that. We should treat that in the same way as we do the Nottingham Forest result. That's disappointing. So I think we could have done better. Yeah, I think Liverpool underperformed. Do I think it's an inexorable spiral that we can never get out of? No. Do I think we're in a situation where, we'll just keep going down and down? No. But I do think that Liverpool, and I was reading that Athletic article the other day, I'll probably do something on my Patreon about that, where it comes down to, we have had a relatively easy start to the season. In the first 8 games, we had the easiest start of any team in the Premier League. But even from then on, we've had a very level, we've played teams at a good time to play them. We've played teams when they're particularly weak. Arsenal, we played them when they were particularly weak. Manchester United, we played them when all these kind of teams, City and Real Madrid in the Champions League. We played all these teams, we played badges. I kept pointing that out. So there are going to be moments where other managers will have made observations from that. And the idea is, if you start to play easy teams, you get your confidence up, you begin to get the system, and then you go up from there. You can't just begin to level out now in the season. We looked fitter than other teams, we looked more bright than other teams, we looked more tactically organized, all these kind of things. You got to capitalize on that. It can't just be, we are that, and then we're just going to keep going with that. It has to keep going up rather than just level out. Liverpool have an impetus, they have a momentum here. We have to capitalize on that. To get level with United for a start, to then make it a race for who gets the next title, brilliant. But on top of that, to then say, right, there is a reason to come here. There is a reason for other players to come in because we've got an exciting project. If Liverpool drop away, if Liverpool show there is not a weakness, but a human side to them, I think it makes it a slightly less appealing project to some people. And I also think we're looking to, at this point in the season, attract people. Left backs, right backs, forwards, one more central midfielder. I think that's another reason that Trent is playing where he is. We want to run things through the midfield more than we do through Trent or another left back. And we want our left backs to be surging forward rather than the Trent situation. And that's frustrating. The ball didn't stick, of course, to Salah yesterday, which also was quite frustrating. There were a couple of times where we basically just fouled out the game. We need to work out better ways of linking up that side. That right side was our weakness yesterday, and it really, really showed. I don't think that'll happen in every game, but it's frustrating. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I will chat to you again on this channel later in the day. And yeah, appreciate all of your feedback. There's some great comments yesterday. Some really smart people in the comments. So get in there. There's a Patreon. There's a Discord. We'll see you guys in there. Much love. Bye.